Hey y'all, welcome back to the shop. It is after hours again. I got the doors locked up, so grab yourself a drink, get comfortable, and let's chat. So, today we are going to be working on a project for another subscriber request. This one is from @itsphobia Rhythms 2010, and he asked if we could work on his profile picture, which is, I'll flash that on the screen now. So as we're looking at it, I asked him a little bit about the background, and he really wasn't sure, and that's cool. It's a pretty cool picture. Like, it's a super cool design. Now, I'm not familiar with the My Singing Monsters, or My Horrific Hideout subsection of the My Singing Monsters. I'm not really familiar with any of that, so I'm not really sure if this is a monster from that, or if this is his own design of a monster that could exist in the community. So I'm not too sure. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. It's a really cool design either way. And so we'll take the picture and do our absolute best to stay faithful to what I think he has created here, and create something in my own style that is like his. So let's go ahead and kick on some music, and we'll get rolling. That might be a little too loud. I'll turn that down just a little bit. Okay. So last video, excuse me, was over an hour. I want to try to keep it to less than that, but I also don't want a short quality, so we'll try to balance the both if we can. Alright, so let's see what we're gonna do here. I was working on something else and I had yellow. We want to turn blue on, so that's what I like to sketch in. Alright, so I like this monster because it almost reminds me of like Sauron from The Lord of the Rings, like the giant all-seeing eye, except this one it's like got a more unique design. It's got the horns on it and kind of the fish, I know what you call those, like the fins on the side of its head. Those are kind of cool. And then it's like overseeing whatever. It looks like it's just kind of lording over the realm, this little rocky realm with these look like bone teeth or what have you, and its head and arms are detached from its body, which is also kind of a neat idea. Alright. So I think what I wanted to do with this design is to make it like typical villain pose, like whoa. And I'm gonna draw this in like a picture, like a normal person, and then we'll cut off like the neck and all that stuff to make it look more like what I think his picture was going for. And he's gonna be like looking up. Okay, and so I think the Lord of the Rings also has some pretty unique monsters, like for sure, because they've got Sauron, right? He's not necessarily a monster, he's like kind of a deity in that universe, almost like Lucifer, I guess, if you think about it. But they've also got the wyverns that the Nazgul ride, and general beasts that are pretty cool, especially a lot of the extended lore in the different books and stuff, the appendices. They have some really cool monsters. We're drawing a little too big for the way our canvas is positioned. Yeah, and again, we're gonna probably end up getting rid of the arms and stuff, because they're like hands with just kind of the forearm, but it's like fire, so they're almost like rocket powered hands. Just pretty cool. think I want the hands to be like this. I'm going to try some of that, more of that forced perspective here. I'm trying to think if there are any actual, like, Greek monsters that might kind of roll down the path of like all-seeing overseer type of monster, and I think really Echidna was the only one, and she was the mother of most of the most horrible monsters in the Greek mythology, right? And the union between her and Typhos produced some of the most horrific monsters, in my opinion, in all of mythology. Like, sure, there are probably some other crazy monsters out there, but I mean, just think of some, like the Chimera, like the Lernian Hydra, or the lion, and I always forget where he's from. But one of the nice things about drawing, like, villain characters, and I'm not sure if this one here that we're doing is a villain character, it kind of, based on the color and the kind of positioning with a little bit of the shape language that's going on with the character that he provided me, it does kind of seem like it's a, if not a villain, then kind of a neutral overseer type of party. And one of the best things about making villains is that's where most of your story comes from. Like, if you don't have a good villain, then you won't have a good hero. So there's not a challenge for him to overcome, or her. And so without the proper enemy, your hero loses their, say, stature, I suppose. But anything that the hero would accomplish seems less without a good villain or a good conflict. So I said a couple videos ago that your story is really only as good as your villain. Because if there's not something for your hero to overcome, people aren't going to want to watch it. Because it's going to be like, yeah, okay, generic hero story number 436 or something. But if you do have a good villain, that's where we're really talking about. And I think a lot of these old mythological stories had excellent villains, and that's why they're so good. If you really think about it. Like, and I think what made the original Avengers movie so compelling is that Loki was such a strong villain. We're gonna have to push this perspective out, like. Like this here. Mess that up. And if you think of most, like, the Disney Renaissance era, I guess is what they call it, just think about those villains. They're all iconic. They all have great designs. They're absolutely excellent. And then look at what Disney's given us lately. The villains are all very bland, mostly stale, and they're kind of like generic villains, and that's unfortunate. If you really look at Scar, like, Scar's a great example. Super iconic villain in The Lion King. Or they try to make villains more personable now, almost so that it seems like their evil can be justified in some way, which is I don't know, so weird to me that that's something they would try to do. Okay, and so this guy... has got like a fur cloak, almost like a priest. Wearing like a fur, or not fur, feathers over the top of him. So we'll just like rough it in real quick here. Or we can do that in red. Yeah, we can do that in red. And then he's kind of like, or she, I'm not really sure if this is, the colors kind of lean me to believe it could be either. In this one. So this character is behind his kind of, they almost look like teeth in the picture. So we can make the character a little bigger here. Bring it down a little bigger. I want to make sure the hands are still in there because the hands are the important part. Like I said, the character doesn't have arms in the reference photo. So I don't want to, start adding body parts that don't exist. But in the foreground, there's like these teeth. And they kind of almost frame the monster, which is super cool. Now he asked me to do his profile picture, which if you zoom into that original picture that I shared, or that I flashed on the screen, there are like tiny characters around him, and I can't, I don't know, my computer's kind of a potato, but I cannot zoom in enough to really see those characters like clearly, and if I try to draw them, that's probably going to mess them up. So I'm going to leave those characters out. But I did see them there. And I know you said you wanted the profile picture, but I just can't zoom in enough to see what they are. And we're going to just kind of finish framing it in. I think we missed the middle. So maybe we'll scoot these over. Or up. We'll pull them up. There we go. And we can just finish adding these teeth here. There we go. And if you think about like the story of Hercules, for instance, that's probably one of the more popular Greek myths ever. Right? There's obviously the Iliad and the Odyssey, and those are important, and there's all the minor tales of the gods and stuff. But Hercules is by far the most popular, in my opinion. Just observe people that I talk to, listening around what I've listened to my whole life. And the reason for that is because the villain is so incredibly compelling that it just makes you want to listen. Because the villain in Hercules' story is not Hades. If anything, Hercules has a pretty decent relationship with his uncle. The villain is Hera. And Hera's kind of a not nice person in mythology. But then again, I mean, it's understandable why she's the way she is because of the way Zeus is. And then we want to maybe move this guy down into the teeth. Too much. You like that? we can get rid of this part because it'll be behind the arm. Alright. We got half a canvas up here. I'm not sure what we're going to do with. And then I'll add a new layer here so we can work on the clothes and not have to worry about screwing up the one layer. Okay, we can probably tone that down. Here we go. Oops. Okay. We're in the wrong layer. Alright. So this creature has, and I don't know if these are maybe wings that it wraps around itself like a cloak. That would be kind of cool. Like, there were, I don't know if you guys remember the old Gargoyles cartoon they had, but they had like the creature would just like be chilling, and its wings behind it, they would wrap around their body and hook the little fingers right here. And they would use it as a cloak, and those were their wings. I always thought that was super cool. Like, what an interesting idea. So I wonder if that's what he was going for with this, with these feather cloak type of deal, or if it's maybe just clothes. Either way, it's pretty cool. Yeah, Hera is just she makes a good villain for whatever reason. Through antiquity, she always kind of has been an antagonist. Even in the Iliad, she was a central antagonist that really started. And I know it was Aphrodite that started the war, but Hera did a lot to perpetuate the conflict between the two sides. And then surprisingly enough, Athena was on the third party in the Eris apple argument that started the whole conflict, really. And she did a lot less to perpetuate the war and more to kind of just help out her favorite heroes. Her favorite mortals, like Odysseus or Diomedes. The one character that I think didn't get enough after the Iliad was over was Achilles' son, Neoptolemus, I believe is what his name is. He was such a psycho that even Odysseus was like, this kid crazy. I don't want, like, we need to get rid of him because he is insane. But then they used him in the final conflict, and he did a lot. He did a lot in the final conflict. It was basically like having a psycho version of Achilles in the conflict. For those of you who know the lore and stuff, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't know why I just colored this part in. We're gonna have to move it this way. So there is like a middle part here. It looks like it's an orange glowing object here. And we'll try to keep most of the stuff that he's added. There we go. And then the rest of it's going to be kind of covered up by this thing. Okay, now we really go in and draw his monster shape now. Just wanted to make it look enough human that it's recognizable. And the eyeball's going to be up here. Or the pupil. The whole thing is kind of an eyeball, I guess. And then he's got like his bloodshot. There we go. And then it's almost like it's wearing a crown or something, like crown of horns, signifying that this guy is like the king of whatever these kind of monsters are. Okay. And so just there's a blueprint for how really good monsters can be made, or good villains can be made by any of these old mythological stories, you know. And it just kills me when I see stories that just don't have good villains, like The Boys that fell apart like crazy. Season 1 was really good. I liked season 1. It was not similar to the comic in every way, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. Like, I'm okay with Invincible, and that deviates from the comics a little bit. But they just lost it when they started making Homelander less of an actual thoughtful villain and more of a Trump analog. I mean, you're the showrunner, make your movie or your TV show however you want, but you also can't be butthurt when people quit watching your show because you've made a show that sucks. You go from season 1, which was actually pretty good, to season 2 that really started losing its way, and then 3 and 4 and 5, which were, god awful. And then they have all these spin-offs for them, which leads me to believe that it's popular enough that people want to keep watching something like that. But then again, I don't know. I don't know how popular it actually is. Whenever I talk to people about TV shows, like in general, The Boys is not something that comes up like pretty much ever. Like, I guess I do have one friend who does talk about The Boys. They watch all the mainstream television shows though, so it's not like it's unusual. But I don't know what else to say. It's like they dumbed down pretty much the whole show, the whole cast, not just Homelander, like all of them. And the BS that they pulled with Butcher's wife, man, why would you do that? Like, I don't get it. Like, really. This horn, I guess, is like, I'm gonna move this one up a little bit this way. Like, literally the whole motivation for Butcher in the comics is that he thinks Homelander killed his wife. Like, and indirectly killed his wife, that is. Because Homelander sexually assaulted her, SA'd her, right? Got her pregnant from that. And then when the baby came out of super, it killed her. It just like exploded from her. And Butcher had to beat it to death with a lamp. It was crazy. And that was Butcher's whole motivation, is that you took everything from me, so now I'm going to try to take everything from you. And I'll make it so that superheroes don't ever take anything from anyone ever again. He knew what he was doing when he took the V himself to make himself a super so that he could fight the supers. So it does like this kind of inward and then outward. Like this. And then there's the same one on this other side. It goes inward. I need to actually move those little fins down a little bit. Here we go. And then it goes inward. And then outward sharply. I mean, I could talk about The Boys all day. I prefer the comics to the show, obviously, because I thought the show sucked after season 1. But the comic wasn't spectacular itself either. It was weird and wildly inappropriate most of the time, which made it fun, I will say. It was definitely not one of my favorite comics ever, but it was interesting, and it was definitely a thought-provoking comic. And that's where the show should have gone. Instead of like weird made for modern audiences type of deal, it should have just been made for the audience who wants to see what it would be like if superheroes were actually real. What some consequences might be. Invincible does a really good job of showing that, and they do so without the weird political ideations. It's there, it's just not, they're not beating you over the head with it. Because I think whoever's writing Invincible right now at least has some knowledge of how to write stories without pounding you over the head with the message. Or even really having an agenda type message to begin with. This guy only got 4 hands, really? Or 4 fingers? I wonder if we keep that. We'll keep that. And we need to make them bigger because they're like more like claws, kind of. Yeah, something like that. Almost like rocket-propelled gloves. Kind of what they look like to me. I think he's got a thumb. You just can't really... Like, this position, you couldn't see the thumb. It's behind there anyway. But on this one, we can. And so we should show it. We'll go this way with the finger. Here we go. And I don't know. I feel like it's all just kind of The Boys in particular. But it's not just The Boys. It's a lot of the films that are coming out now, too. Or just, they're not great. Like, I had just heard that The Mandalorian and Grogu completely tanked. I liked season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian also. That's another show that really just kind of lost its identity pretty quick. It just became the Bo-Katan show after a while. Almost like whoever was writing it forgot who the main character was, and they decided they wanted to go, and this is why I suspect it was Dave Filoni. They just wanted to go back to the clone, or the Jedi Rebels era, or Star Wars Rebels era. Back when Dave Filoni had all the creative freedom for that television show. Because he started throwing those characters around all over the place. Ahsoka was so bad. And that was such a shame too, because they were able to get Hayden Christensen back to play Anakin. There was so much lost potential there. I just felt like none of the stories were really compelling enough for me to want to really care about, you know? And I care about these characters. I like Ahsoka. I watched Star Wars Rebels. And all the Clone Wars back in the day. It was good stuff. Okay. So let's go ahead and lock in these. Let's make it a little bigger. And don't get me started on the Acolyte. Holy cow, what a bad show that was. Made absolutely no sense at all. I don't know. I think since Lucas lost, well, he didn't lose it. Since he sold it, Star Wars, it's just not been good. And that's sad. Because I remember when I had heard that Lucas was selling Star Wars to Disney, I was like, good, maybe we'll be actually getting more Star Wars films and they'll be well produced. Because at that point, Disney hadn't really been considered that, weird, crazy organization that destroys the IPs that it gets. Yet, eventually became that, but alright, we'll drop that down. Throw some blacks on here. Is it too big? It's maybe too small. Helps if we add a new layer. But again, and now think about this. Remember what I said. Villains are what makes your movies great. And probably the best part of the original Star Wars were the villains. Darth Vader is probably the greatest villain, or one of the greatest villains of all time. And I know that's not easy to replicate something like that, but at least it gives you an idea of the scope and scale that your villain needs to be in Star Wars in order to compete. Like, maybe they don't have to be as powerful as Darth Vader, but they should be at least as intimidating. I mean, it was a crippled dude in a life support suit, but they made him intimidating, and that was the important thing. Like, so with the boys, it's like when you take someone like Homelander, who's basically just evil Superman, and in season 1 you make him actually a menace. And an intelligent menace, and then you change his character. And this was weird, by the way. I thought this was weird as hell. The breast milk thing, that's not a Homelander thing in the comics. That's only a Homelander thing in the show. That's actually a mother's milk thing in the comics, and he doesn't do it because he's like weirdly attracted to it. He has to do it or he'll die. So, I don't know why they switched that up. And maybe it was just kind of weird. But I don't know, man. Giving Homelander this, like, breast milk fetish is weird. Such a strange move. Why would you do that? I would be cool if somebody... If whoever it was that decided to make that change were to be like, yeah, so this is the reason we did it. I'd be like, okay, as long as it makes sense, not, stupid, because, they come out and they're like, we only did it because we think Trump's a giant baby and he probably drinks people's breast milk in real life or fantasizes over it. I'm going to be like, that's dumb. That's stupid and you're stupid for doing that. and it's not because I'm trying to defend Trump. It's because that's a stupid decision in a storytelling setting. Like, just to spite someone in real life, you're going to basically ruin a movie or a television show just so that you can be like, I hate Trump. Like, no, bro. I'm trying to ruin good stories with your nonsense. I don't know. It's so stupid, though. I keep messing that up. And the Emperor was a very good villain too in Star Wars. So he has these, they're not fins that rotate inward, they're actually outward rotating. So let's go ahead and change that. Change that up. There we go. And so that's why in the sequel trilogy, like in the prequel trilogy, you've got tons of good villains, right? Some of the villains really carry the story. And now, I think what people did not like about the prequels for Star Wars was that it focused too much on the internal politics of the galaxy. I thought it was fascinating. But I really get into the lore and the stories and the all the backstories and stuff like that. I like that. But I can understand if you go for the spectacle, you're probably going to be disappointed. If it's just all, the political, like the Galactic Senate stuff, and I can understand that to some degree. I thought it was all interesting backstory, like it needed to happen so that you could understand how Palpatine took over as, the ruler of the Senate, and where he eventually just dissolves the Senate completely in the original series, or the original trilogy. He just eventually just completely dissolves the Senate entirely and becomes the Emperor. So I always thought that was kind of an important aspect, and it needed to be conveyed. Maybe there's a way they could have done it so that it wasn't so much political, stuff in it. I didn't think it was, really. I didn't. I watched those shows probably, 100 times each when I was a kid. I thought they were great. I grew up with this prequel trilogy. Like, that was my era. My parents grew up with the original trilogy, and my dad liked it well enough. It was one of those things where it's like, he wasn't like a fanatic, but he didn't like it. I will still go, like, on Disney Plus or whatever, if I'm just like, I can't find something to watch, I will go and I'll start with the prequel trilogy. I'll never make it to the actual trilogy, but I'll watch the prequel films. The sequels were just, by contrast, so awful. I just, because who's the main antagonist in the sequels? Like, it's supposed to be Snoke. That's the big guy at the top. And then it's supposed to be Kylo Ren. But Kylo Ren is such an incompetent villain that it's you're never really in fear that... let me switch this up so we don't get copyrighted. It's... you never really fear that any of the heroes are in danger. That's how incompetent the villains are in the sequel trilogy. And they should feel dangerous. Like, Luke doesn't beat Vader until the very end. He gets throttled a couple times. like, you really, you get used to the fact that Darth Vader is actually more powerful than Luke, and he might even be more powerful than Yoda at this point in the story. He was more powerful probably than even Obi-Wan was at that point in the story, even though Obi-Wan just kind of was like, yeah, I'm out. In order to, make Luke stronger. Or whatever he did that for. I still kind of like, I don't know, so that he could ascend to the, that part of the Force, be a Force ghost. But in the prequel trilogy, there was kind of always a new villain to fear. At first it was Darth Maul, and he was competent enough in the first encounter that he really winded Qui-Gon. Like, you weren't sure if Qui-Gon was actually going to make it out of that or not. The first fight on Tatooine. And then he ends up going on to kill Qui-Gon later in the movie. So it's like, yeah, this guy's a serious threat. And it really took Obi-Wan kind of a stroke of luck for him to even be able to beat Darth Maul. But Darth Maul's design was so freaking cool. I will say that. What an amazing character design. There. And then after Darth Maul, we got Count Dooku, who the expanded lore. Now, this is where I will give Dave Filoni credit. The expanded lore on Count Dooku is awesome. He was basically a political outcast because he did not believe that the Senate had the galaxy's best interests in mind, and it certainly didn't have his system's best interests in mind. And so he directly and ideologically opposed what the Senate was doing and began to lead the separatists or whatever, what have you. But eventually he did join the dark side. Instead of being like that neutral third party, he did join with the Emperor. And most likely it was just so that he could, just long enough so that he could find a way to overthrow him. But that's not unlike Sith motivations. To always be trying to overthrow the guy ahead of you. What I was really hoping that the sequel trilogy would do is add Darth Plagueis. Like, maybe what I was hoping, if I were writing it, I probably would have said that Emperor Palpatine or Darth Sidious didn't actually kill Darth Plagueis. He can't be killed conventionally. And he had no means to actually kill him, so instead he sealed him away. And it was his power that was keeping him sealed away. And so when Palpatine died, that seal was broken. And Plagueis was able to return. And over time, like, he was released, but he was super weak. Over time, he became gradually stronger. And then you can, like, that can be your main antagonist. Now you've got someone who was more powerful than the Emperor, since Palpatine had to kill him in his sleep. We gotta add a new layer for the background. You know what I mean? That's what I would have done if I were writing it. Not that I'm, some expert writer of stories or something. I just thought it would have been cooler, and then you can kick off like the new generation of heroes too from that. Like as Plagueis was revamping his power, he needed acolytes, and in increasing his own power, he basically turned a bunch of people who were force sensitive to the dark side, made them his subordinates. And you could run with that for your series for a long, long time. Like, because the difference between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy was like 40 years or something, right? Or longer. That's a lot of time to be brooding in the background. I don't know. That's my opinion. But that sets up a really strong villain. I'm going to label these because I'm going to lose track of them if I don't. And then you could also do like the prequels did, where each film has kind of its own unique villain that is unique from Darth Plagueis, and they eventually build up to Plagueis. C'est la vie, right? They've already made it. It's already done. They've already pretty much said they're not going back on it, and that's their final. Like, they're not going to let anyone remake it or try to do anything different. At this point, they can't anyways, because Carrie Fisher's dead, unfortunately. So they couldn't have a Leia Organa again. Alright. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to get rid of that. Get rid of the red, because I think we're done with the red. We on the ink layer. Add another plume down here. And then we're going to drop this so that we can draw some of these rock formations that are on the original picture. I don't know if we can, to be honest with you. Let's make them big. That's definitely a direction you could have taken Star Wars, but they didn't. And so here we are with what we got, and we got to be happy with what we got. Well, we don't have to be. I'm certainly not. It just seems like they don't understand their fans. That's what Disney seems nowadays. They don't understand their fans. Their animated films seem to still do okay. Sometimes they get good writers. Like the new Lilo and Stitch was awful, though. Like, it completely abandoned the meaning and purpose of the original film. Also, they could, sell Stitch plushies or whatever. And that's cool. I just think if you write a better story, then you don't have to worry about... You can still sell Stitch plushies, but you can also get like a Lilo and Stitch 2. all while making a good story for people. You know, I don't know. What do I know about how to run a big business like that? Tell interesting stories. You know, so news update for anyone who watched the very first video I ever put out, where we were designing an art piece for our local little library. We entered that into the contest. I entered that into the contest where the community voted on it, and it actually won. So this weekend I will probably be painting that on a physical box, which is insane to think about. My art actually won some kind of a contest. People actually liked that enough. So I'm very grateful for that too. Like, super grateful for it. I don't even know what we're doing at this point with these rocks. There is one in particular that I feel like is important to the profile picture, and it's this orange one. There's like one with an orange eyeball on it. And I feel like that one we need to add at least the orange eyeball. Add it right here. Seems like it matters. It's got like the little eyeball outline. Oof, my circles are struggling today. There. Now focus up. Okay, so we'll bring the ink back. Most of that's just not going to be there anyway. Like this part's all just concealed behind the hand. The fire here, but at least it looks a little bit more like there's something else existing in this little cavern. Put the rocks over here too. There we go. I'm not sure where we're at now, but I know we're at least 30 minutes. That first video was 30 minutes. And we're past it now and 13 minutes into the next one. So we're pretty close to an hour again. But then, yeah, we're at nearly an hour. That's crazy. Alright, I'll try to wrap this up. We won't spend too much more time on the background here. Get some of these rocks in here and we can continue chatting about good villains and why they're important to your story. I just feel like modern writers have really lost the plot on that. Like they lost the entire idea that the villain is what makes your hero great. Otherwise, what's so special about your hero? Like, are they slaying dragons? Is it an easy dragon to slay? What's the point? Like, what's your hero doing that's different from a normal person or a city guard? Is it just because they're plucky? Have an interesting attitude? Because that's not good enough. It's not good enough to just have a plucky protagonist, you know? You absolutely need a villain to challenge them and give the film or TV show or story stakes. So without stakes, nobody gives a dang about anything about your story at all. So that's one of the things I try to always focus on whenever I make my stories, is making the villain as interesting as possible, even if they're not powerful per se. Make them smart, or make them interesting in some way that is actually challenging to society. It makes the hero actually mean something. My opinion. Okay, so this is an orange. And it looks like it's like lighter on the inside and darker on the outside, which we can add a glow effect to the eye. Whoops. That'll go on the background color layer. Yeah, this is like a gray. This kind of gray. Same with these. And we'll go back up here and add some grooves on the horn. To give it some texture. Make it look like it's actually a round object. It's a cylindrical object and not, you know, just, I don't know. There we go. Okay, back to color. So, I'm trying to think of other IPs where monsters are like, or villains are kind of like super critical. But in particular monsters, since that's kind of what we're talking about right now, since we're making a monster. Maybe one of them is actually like the typical, like the Western monster tropes, like King Kong, or the Easterns like kaijus. That's interesting. You know, the Godzilla type monsters. Oh, this thing has an eye. My fault. We'll move this out. Further out. See if we can actually move it out without messing it up. Like there. It's got eyes on the side of its head. And they're kind of like sideways eyes too. There we go. And we'll just draw like the little outline of the eye here and imply that it's there on this one, since there's going to be like perspective blocking it. Okay, back to the color. Probably going to need to erase this ink here. Whoa, we're still on ink. That's not good. We don't want to put that color on a different level. Get rid of that. clean this little area up here from where we grabbed it. Here we go. Okay, and then we can fill in this with black. And then these with white. Typical eye stuff. And I think a lot of people find monster movies so fun to watch because you have a very clear villain with typically very easy, simple, and clear motivations. They're purple. Or very complex motivations like Frankenstein or like Dracula. I think we've gotten away from the interesting monster ideas to more of like violence for violence's sake. And I guess if you're into that sort of thing, that's okay. These are blue, like this blue. Okay, and this little bit is like this same color, and it's also got the glow effect. This is the same color as this. And this is like the same type of color as this, but a little more purple maybe. And gray. And his belt is like an orange, so it's like this. And then it's like more pink. It's like this, but more pink. Like a darker, yeah, maybe. And we got some background ink bleeding through that's gonna mess with our coloring. So let's get rid of this. Okay. And then I did want to keep the video to as close to well, less than an hour, but if we can try to keep it as close to an hour as possible, that might be the best for everyone. So I may have to finish this, like give it shadows and stuff off screen, which is what I did for the last video too. We'll get the colors in. So there's like 3 different layers of colors. There's like the top layer that is this dark green, like this. And then there's the second layer, which is like a light blue. More of a blue. Like that. Oh. This one is, let's get rid of that color because that's background element. And then the bottom layer is like a darker, almost like it's a shadowed version. There we go. Okay, this color, and then this color. And then this is fire. I always like to do fire on different layers. Let's see, there's gonna be orange on the outside. actually it's going to be red, or more red on the outside. And then this bit will be orange. And then this bit will be yellow. Well, if I have my fire logic correct, which I hope I do. Okay, and then this has like light orange streaks for like the veins bulging here. Okay, now we can add the glow effect. Like, that's not gonna work. More orange. No. It's not gonna give us an orange. No, that's probably okay. It's gonna be right in here, and we're gonna fill that in. And then we're going to blur it. To give us that glow effect. Something we can also do is like lower the opacity a little bit. There we go. We can move it around. But I think right there is about where it is in the reference picture. And then we're going to do the same thing down here, but like for more of like a heart. And since we've already blurred, we don't want to blur the whole layer, so we'll just go like this. We'll add our blur effect. There we go. And then we basically just do the same thing for the fire. Like, honestly. Fill it there. There, I shouldn't have done the dark outline for the fire. That's okay. I think we'll be okay. We're gonna blur that. And we're gonna blur that. And then we're gonna get rid of this. The blur effect is bleeding into the glove. That is a missing piece. Weird. Alright. I wonder if we do just get rid of the... Whoa. The ink right here. This ink stuff. And then just make the fire... We can blur this fire too and almost make it look like a real fire. So we go back down to this layer where the color actually is. And then we add our blur again, but not as strong. Hold up. I forgot the inside. Whoa. Forgot the inside ink. It is helpful sometimes to do that outline if you really need to identify where the different colors of the fire are, like that represent the different heat signatures. that we see. And then we go here and we'll give a blur. Enough to make it look like a fire, but not going crazy. Alright, there we go. Alright. And we gotta do that for the same thing over here, but we're gonna do that down here on this background color layer. No! That's alright, it'll be okay. Okay, so we want to add orange, maximum orange. Blow it out, and then we'll blur it. We do have to circle it here though, otherwise it's going to blur these other colors that we've messed up on. Put them on the wrong layer. Shrink that glow a little bit, put it right in the middle. Alright, so what we'll do, I'll do the background colors after we're done with the video. So, and then I'll post the whole short at the speed paint for the short. That'll be, I'll put that one in the line and it'll show up here in a few days. I think we're like 4 or 5 days of shorts out. So it'll show up in 4 or 5 days. Something like that. Sooner. And then we're going to start getting into animation soon. So I'll probably do a lot less speed paints and maybe some less shop talk videos and more like process for animation videos, maybe. I don't know. If you guys like the shop talk videos, we can keep doing it, like the After Dark, because it's just chill. It's almost like I was treating it like a radio show, kind of, where we're just sitting around hanging out, you know, almost like we're just chilling in the shop after hours. Everything's locked up. We're just talking about whatever's fun, you know what I mean? Whatever we want to talk about. So, all right, well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I'll finish this up in just a minute, and then I'll post the whole the speed paint in the shorts. So, have a great rest of the day, and until next time, we'll see you.